the truth you keep avoiding. There comes a point when the heart knows, long before the mind is ready to admit it. This relationship is no longer good for you. It doesn't feel like love anymore. It doesn't bring you peace. It doesn't uplift, nourish, or support who you are becoming. Instead, it confuses you, exhausts you, dims you, and yet you stay. Not because you're weak, but because you're entangled, emotionally, mentally, energetically. You keep hoping that things will change, that this is just a rough phase, that the person you fell in love with will return. But this is the trap. The version you fell for may have never really existed. It was a projection, one you wanted to believe. And now you're stuck in a loop of nostalgia and pain. The longer you delay facing this truth, the deeper the damage seeps into your soul. A toxic relationship doesn't start with violence. It starts with denial. And every time you lie to yourself to avoid the pain of walking away, you let the poison continue its quiet work. One of the greatest illusions that keeps you bound to toxicity is emotional loyalty. You feel responsible for their happiness, their healing, their peace. You convince yourself that they're not that bad, or that everyone has issues, or worse, that maybe you're the one with the problem. But this kind of thinking isn't compassion, it's emotional entrapment. It's what narcissists, manipulators, and emotionally unavailable people thrive on. They subtly convince you that you owe them your patience, your forgiveness, your sacrifice. They wear your empathy like a weapon. They twist your kindness into a leash. And slowly, you stop living for yourself. You become a caretaker, a fixer, a peacekeeper, anything but your authentic self. What you don't realize is that you are dying inside in the name of love. And love that demands the death of your spirit is not love. It is emotional enslavement. Toxic relationships don't usually explode. They erode. You don't notice the collapse all at
Pega o
once.
outro.
It's slow, gradual, unseen. At first, you make small compromises. You don't speak up when something hurts. You tolerate disrespect once or twice. You apologize just to keep the peace. Then it becomes normal. Your boundaries blur. Your needs shrink. Your opinions get quieter. Eventually, you no longer recognize yourself. You're always walking on eggshells, monitoring your tone, second guessing your feelings, trying not to set them off. You're emotionally exhausted, but you don't understand why. The truth is, the relationship has made you disappear. And the saddest part is, you've gotten used to your own absence. This is the cost of staying too long, the slow death of your authenticity. And if you don't choose distance now, you may forget how to choose yourself at all. You hold on because you still believe in potential, not reality. You remember the sweet moments, the early intimacy, the laughter. You hope that person is still in there somewhere, beneath the layers of control, coldness, and chaos. But hope, when misused, becomes a prison. You're not loving a person. You're loving a possibility. And possibility isn't proof. What you need to understand is this: someone's potential doesn't entitle them to your presence. You don't exist to be their emotional rehab. You're not a project manager for their personal growth. If they are hurting you now, if they are choosing ego over empathy now, if they are gaslighting, demeaning, or neglecting you now, that is who they are, regardless of who they could be. You deserve to be loved by someone who doesn't require you to abandon yourself in the process. Creating distance doesn't mean you hate them. It means you finally love yourself enough to stop allowing their behavior to damage your well-being. It means you've seen the cycle repeat one too many times. It means you're tired of crying over the same fights, feeling lonely in their presence, and being blamed for your own pain. The choice to step away is not selfish. It is sacred. You are reclaiming your time, your energy, your clarity, and it will hurt. You will doubt yourself, They will make you feel guilty. Others might not understand, but deep down, you will know. This is what freedom feels like in its rawest, messiest form. Choosing yourself is not glamorous. It is not easy. But it is the only way to heal what has been silently bleeding for far too long. Distance is not created by words. It is built by action. You must stop responding to bait. Stop participating in emotional games. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You may need to cut communication, block numbers, mute social media, change your routines, and most importantly, detach internally. You have to stop waiting for their apology, their change, their realization. Let go of the idea that closure will come from them. It won't. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself the day you decide that your peace is more important than their presence. Distance doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're done bleeding for people who only ever brought you pain. Once you create distance, expect withdrawal. Emotional addiction is real. Your body and mind have been conditioned to seek the highs and survive the lows. You've been on a roller coaster of attention, affection, rejection, and confusion. Leaving that cycle will feel like detoxing from a drug. You'll crave their attention even if it was harmful. You'll miss the chaos because it was familiar. You'll second guess your decision in the silence that follows. But silence is sacred. Let it teach you. Sit with it. Let the pain rise. Let it scream. Let it cry. Because buried beneath that pain is your power, waiting to be remembered. Your nervous system needs time to recalibrate. Your heart needs time to relearn safety. Be patient. Don't return just because the pain is loud. Stay, heal, rise. And then, almost without notice, something begins to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, but subtly, like the first soft breath of spring after a long, brutal winter. The pain doesn't vanish, but it stops defining you. The memories still echo, but they no longer command your attention like tyrants. And you begin to sense something strange, a peace that isn't dependent on anyone else's validation, presence, or approval. It isn't a peace that came from being rescued, or heard, or finally understood by the one who broke you. Number. It came from the day you chose to stop waiting. It came from the moment you realized that saving yourself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Life doesn't wait for apologies. Healing doesn't wait for justice. And so you walked away. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself. Your breath changes. It deepens. Your thoughts clear, no longer clouded by constant second guessing or the endless loop of self-blame. You begin to laugh again, but this time it is different. It is not the laughter used to smooth over awkward silences or to keep the peace. It is a laugh born from lightness, from space within the soul where heaviness used to live. You feel your body relaxing in its own presence, unguarded, no longer alert to subtle manipulations or invisible landmines. It feels like stepping into your own skin again, after living like a ghost in someone else's story. You remember who you were before you became an emotional hostage, before your silence was used as currency, before your boundaries were treated like inconveniences. And that remembrance doesn't just come as nostalgia. It comes as resurrection. And slowly, the rebuilding begins. Not with grand plans, but with small, sacred acts, making tea in silence and enjoying it, sleeping deeply without fear, speaking your truth in small, steady doses. You become selective with your energy, where it goes, who gets it, and why. You start choosing joy over obligation, clarity over chaos, stillness over performative connection. You no longer feel the urge to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. The toxic fog that once surrounded your mind begins to thin, and with each sunrise, you see the world not as a battlefield, but as a garden waiting to be tended. You understand, perhaps for the first time, that peace isn't something you chase. It's what arises when you stop betraying yourself for belonging. The wounds you once thought would never close begin to scab, not because time magically heals all, but because you stopped picking them open with contact, with hope, with fantasy. The voices in your head that once echoed their criticisms begin to fade. You replace them with your own, gentle, grounded, present. You begin to speak to yourself as you once wished they would speak to you. You are not witnessing a choice. You are witnessing a desperate, reflexive, and non-negotiable law of psychic survival. For the narcissist, the act of blaming is not a tactic in their arsenal. It is as essential and automatic as the beating of a heart. To ask them to accept blame is not to ask them to be humble. It is to ask them to commit an act of instantaneous and total self-annihilation. To truly comprehend this, you must venture into the terrifying landscape of their inner world, a place not of thoughts and feelings as you know them, but a meticulously constructed, hermetically sealed, and exquisitely fragile museum. At the very center of this silent, sterile museum stands a single flawless life-size statue made of the most delicate crystal. This is their false self, their grandiose persona, the perfect, infallible, and eternally blameless God they have built to worship and to be. The museum's sole, obsessive purpose is to protect this crystal statue from a single grain of external dust, a single vibration of criticism, a single crack of imperfection. Outside the reinforced walls of this museum rages a horrifying, eternal, and chaotic storm. This is the unendurable truth of their inner reality. A howling void of profound worthlessness, a swirling vortex of deep-seated shame, and a primal terror of being exposed as the empty fraud they intuitively know themselves to be. The act of accepting blame, of internalizing even the smallest iota of responsibility for a negative outcome, would be the equivalent of taking a sledgehammer to the museum's walls, allowing the full, annihilating force of that storm to rush in and shatter the crystal statue into a billion unrecognizable shards. In that moment, they would be left naked, alone, and defenseless in the heart of the hurricane of their own true self, facing the unbearable horror of their own emptiness. And so, their entire psychological apparatus, every neuron, every instinct, is programmed with one prime directive that supersedes all morality, all logic, all love. Protect the statue at all costs. Blame, therefore, is not a shield they choose to hold up. It is an emergency teleportation device that is hardwired into their very being. The instant a negative outcome, a mistake, a failure, a conflict, a disappointment, materializes in their reality, it is perceived as a direct, lethal missile aimed at the statue. And in that nanosecond, their psyche grabs that toxic, radioactive piece of negativity and teleports it outside the museum walls, launching it with violent, unerring force onto the nearest available target, you. This is not a simple verbal act of saying, "It's your fault." It is a profound, aggressive, and violent psychological process known as projection, and the narcissist is a grandmaster of this dark and twisted art. They do not just accuse you of their flaws. They perform a kind of psychic surgery on themselves without anesthetic, actively and brutally excising their own shame, their own incompetence, their own malice, their own infidelity, their own cruelty from their consciousness, and suturing it directly onto your soul. You become their living effigy, the vessel that must contain all the parts of themselves they cannot bear to own. When they fail at a project at work, and then come home to call you incompetent and lazy, it is because the searing feeling of their own incompetence is a psychological acid that threatens to dissolve their crystal statue from within. They must pour that acid onto you, watch it burn you, to feel clean and whole themselves. When they lie to you with a straight face, and then, hours later, fly into a rage accusing you of being a dishonest and secretive person. It is because their core identity as a good, honest person cannot coexist with the factual reality of their own deception. Therefore, you must become the liar, so they can remain the saint of their own narrative. You are not just a scapegoat, you are their psychic landfill, the designated, officially zoned dumping ground for all of their toxic, radioactive waste. They treat your mind, your heart, your spirit, and your reputation as a hazardous waste facility. And they visit it daily,
The both side.
hourly, to unload the burdens of their own corrupted soul. This is the very reason why their accusations feel so bizarre, so surreal, so utterly disconnected from reality that it makes you feel you are going insane. It is because their blame has absolutely nothing to do with you, your actions, or the objective truth of the situation. It is a direct, unedited, verbatim transcript of their own inner monologue of self-hatred, a confession of their own sins, which they then force you to read aloud in the first person as if it were your own autobiography. You feel a dizzying confusion because you are desperately trying to find the logic in their accusation. You are meticulously searching your own memory for the evidence of your alleged crime. But you will find nothing because you are looking in the wrong place. The origin of the crime is not in your history, it is in their soul. You are being put on a show trial for their sins, and the verdict is always, inevitably guilty, because your conviction is the only thing that grants them their acquittal in the court of their own mind. And now, viewers, you must face the most brutal and painful truth of all, the reason so many of you are chosen for this horrific role. The narcissist, like a predator, has a chillingly accurate instinct for locating the perfect host for their psychic parasites. They are drawn with magnetic precision to the empathetic, the responsible, the conscientious, the compassionate, those who are quick to self-reflect, to doubt themselves, and to accept a portion of the blame in any conflict in the noble hope of finding harmony and resolution. Many of you were likely taught that taking responsibility is a virtue. You were taught that it's important to look at your own part in any disagreement. You came to the relationship with an open heart and a willingness to say those fateful words. Okay, maybe it was me. I'm sorry. And the narcissist smelled this beautiful quality on you, like a shark smells a single drop of blood in a vast ocean. Your capacity for self-blame was the open, welcoming wound through which they could inject all their venom. Every time you accepted their blame, every time you swallowed your confusion and apologized for something you didn't do just to keep the fragile peace, you did something far more damaging than just placating them. You validated their entire distorted reality. You confirmed to them that their system works,
Eu curti.
that the museum is safe, that the crystal statue is secure and still gleaming. You became, unwittingly, a co-conspirator in your own psychological demolition, a willing janitor in their psychic waste disposal system, dutifully cleaning up the messes they made so they wouldn't have to. They cannot maintain a reality in which they are at fault, so they must create a shared reality with someone who is willing to be at fault for them. The blame game is not a game for one player. It requires a partner who will agree to be the loser.